So there are indications right now that the United States may be preparing a military strike against Iran. Now, look, it's entirely possible that doesn't happen, and maybe we're just flexing our muscles during these negotiations. We do that sometimes, but there's a lot of key assets moving into the region that we wouldn't really need for any purpose other than striking Iran. So let's dive into this. Starting with Defense Blog, they reported earlier today, quote, the United States is quietly preparing for a possible military operation targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure, according to multiple indicators observed across the region. And we're going to get into a couple of those key indicators here. So starting out, they say that in recent days, observers have noted the redeployment of several B-2 Spirit stealth bombers from the U.S. Air Force's 509th Bomb Wing to Diego Garcia, a remote base in the Indian Ocean often used for long-range strike operations. And yes, we are going to take a look at where Diego Garcia is because it's kind of a unique location, all things considered. But to add to this here, we have the Intel Frog over on X that's monitoring this and actually published some satellite imagery that I don't feel comfortable sharing, but I guess it's out there. And he says that at least 5 U.S. Air Force B-2 Spirits and 7 C-17 Globemasters have arrived at Diego Garcia in the last 3 days. That is a lot of major assets. And we'll play some footage of the B-2 here just because it's kind of a cool aircraft. This is not recent. This is at least a year or two old, so know that. But these B-2 stealth long-range bombers, there's only certain targets that we need to use that against, right? These are not necessary for striking militia groups in Iraq and Syria. Not really even necessary for hitting the Houthis, although I believe we may have used a B-2 at one point last year. Really, you're talking about any country with a hardened air defense network. So Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, and maybe a few others, at least adversarial nations. Now, where these B-2s moved was to a location in the Middle East, closer, not really in the Middle East, in that part of the world, but closer and more able to strike targets in the Middle East if needed. So here we've got Iran and Yemen, ongoing operations against the Houthis, and we're going to talk about that today. And this, luckily there's this red dot in the middle of the ocean that helps me figure out where Diego Garcia is. And it's just this little guy. Not a lot here. But the airfield, and you can see, God, the detail in Google Maps is wild, isn't it? So anyways, clearly military base. This isn't a secret. So clearly a military airfield. We know that it's there. You can Google it, the location. In some recent satellite imagery, we're definitely starting to see some B-2s lined up on the tarmac. I do not feel comfortable sharing that, so I'm not going to. But nonetheless, we've got the B-2 bombers arriving in theater, so that's one of the indications. The other one here is that, as we reported just a couple days ago, the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group has departed the Western Pacific and is currently en route to the Arabian Sea. The Arabian Sea, in that area, that general geographic portion of the globe, is also where the Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group is operating. So that means we are going to have 2 carrier strike groups in the Middle East. Again, when you're talking about what these might be needed for, it's not militia groups. It's not even the Houthis. It's Iran. That would be the target set for this type of firepower. So we got to keep that in mind. Now, all of this comes amidst some recent negotiations between Trump and Khamenei, or the leadership in Iran, kind of sort of a little bit. It's not entirely clear what that looks like right now. Last week, Trump said that he sent Khamenei a letter proposing negotiations for a new nuclear deal with a 2-month ultimatum to reach an agreement. It's according to a source reported in CNN. And then they said that the communication contained more of a threatening posture, but some opportunities for Iran, and they expect some sort of response here in the coming days. I mentioned the 2-month timeline, but let's not spend too much time on that because we don't actually know when it started. Like, was the timeline when Trump wrote the letter? Was it when the Ayatollah received it? Because there was strangely like a 5 to 6 day gap there. Or is it a 2-month ultimatum once they sit down and actually start negotiating a deal? I don't know, but there's an ultimatum in there somewhere. And we have seen kind of an increased, aggressive language when talking about the Iranian threat. In fact, to that end, let's go ahead and jump real quick to a clip I played a couple days ago, but it's worth rehashing here, of National Security Advisor Michael Waltz talking about this specific issue on CBS Face the Nation. Let's give it a listen.
Full dismantlement. Okay. Iran has to give up its program in a way that the entire world can see. And this is, look, as President Trump has said, this is coming to a head. All options are on the table. And it is time for Iran to walk away completely from its desire to have a nuclear weapon. And they will not and cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapons program. That's enrichment,
to the president's
that is weaponization, and that it's strategic missile program.
So that pretty well summarizes like the current U.S. posture towards Iran. Overall, no bomb. That's the thing. We're pretty clear on that. Pretty clear on that messaging. But some interesting things that have come out in recent days. Just yesterday, I think it came out yesterday, definitely came out in March. It was supposed to be reported yesterday, but of course we've got these Houthi signal group chats that are taken up all the time unnecessarily. What just came out was the 2025 annual threat assessment from the United States intelligence community. This comes out every year. Yesterday, D&I Gabbard, the director of the CIA, Ratcliffe, and others, were the head of the DIA, were all set to present this to the Senate. And today they were going to present it to the House. Instead, they were answering questions about classified material going out on signal. Instead, when looking at this, though, there's an aspect or a portion on Iran talking about WMDs. And again, this one from the U.S. intelligence community yesterday, or at least March of 2025, quote, "We continue to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. Though pressure has probably built on him to do so. In the past year, there's been an erosion of a decades-long taboo in discussing nuclear weapons in public that has emboldened nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus." Now, this gets kind of messy here quickly because when you're talking about nuclear weapons, there's multiple aspects. You have the enrichment to the appropriate weaponization level, if you will. Then you have the miniaturization, which I can never say, to actually get it into a warhead. And then you have the delivery mechanism to actually be able to launch that missile or drop that bomb, if that's the way you want to go about it. So there's multiple steps involved here. And according to the U.S. intelligence community this month, Iran is not building a bomb. However, today, U.S. Strategic Command, or STRATCOM, put out a statement saying, quote, "Iran has reduced the time required to produce sufficient weapons-grade uranium for a nuclear device from 10 to 15 days to presumably less than 1 week." It's a little bit in contradiction with what the intelligence community said yesterday, and STRATCOM is the organization that oversees our nuclear weapons, so it's something they watch. But the idea there is that would be stage one. They could weaponize uranium, and then after that, and could create a dirty bomb from that. But the following steps then would be, can they miniaturize it to put on some sort of missile or rocket or ICBM, something like that, and then can they, or not ICBM, but a missile, and then actually being able to utilize in that capacity. So step one, little contradiction inside the United States here, but in line with this, like as all of this is happening, we are getting a little more information out of Iran, which I feel like is notable. We've got Khamenei putting out some statements the other day, and I got it. I feel like this isn't him. It's not the actual supreme leader of Iran tweeting, but I like to think that it is, because to me, that's funny. Anyways, on the 21st, he wrote, quote, "If the United States or anyone else commits any malicious act against Iran, they will receive a severe blow. The United States keeps issuing threats. They must know that we've never been the initiators of conflicts with anyone. But if someone commits a malicious act and starts something, they must know that they will receive severe blows. And then finally, the U.S. must know that when facing Iran, threats will never achieve anything." And I think now is a good time to show you a clip that Iran just happened to put out. I'm sure it's a coincidence, of some of their underground military facilities just 2 days ago. So kind of in the middle of this, Trump waiting to hear back from Iran, and bam, we've got this IRGC video. Let's give it a watch. Look, those underground tunnels, that underground infrastructure, that's no joke. Like, that will be a real significant challenge to effectively destroy that. We probably have to go after some of the entrances, maybe some soft spots, but these are built into a couple different areas in Iran. We don't exactly know where all of them are, or at least that's not public. There's a couple that are relatively public, but the idea there is they've got a lot of missiles, drones, military equipment, and if there was some sort of nuclear program, it's probably down there, right? It's probably not just sitting above ground in an area that we can strike with a traditional bomb. So when you start to see assets like B-2 bombers being moved into the region, that's what they're looking at right there. These major underground military facilities in Iran that probably are housing portions of the Iranian nuclear program. Now, in line with all of this, of course, we've got Iran's friends, the Houthis. And I believe just a few minutes ago, before hitting record, it looks like the United States carried out another wave of strikes into Yemen. Yemen reported on Wednesday that at least 17 different U.S. strikes hit across their country. We still don't really have any sort of battle damage assessment or a roll-up of exactly how these strikes are playing out. In that same Face the Nation interview, National Security Advisor Waltz said that, quote, 75% of our U.S. flag shipping now has to go around the southern coast of Africa rather than going through the Suez Canal. If it was 75% just within the last couple of days, there's no way that number's decreased. Now that we've got hostilities kind of picking up between the Houthis and the United States, my guess is there's probably even more ships right now saying, no thanks, we'll just go around. But either way, I haven't seen any real-time impact on shipping. So that shipping lane is as depressed as it ever has been since November of a couple of years ago. And then, of course, when looking at all of this, I got to go back to the Biden quote of January 2024 that, fair warning, I feel like I'm going to use this a lot going forward. Like, until the Houthi situation here is resolved, I'm going to keep using this. But he was asked by a reporter if the attacks are working against the Houthis. And he said, quote, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Again, no clear indications of what the battle damage assessments are here. If any senior leaders have been taken out, there's been speculation that maybe like the head of the Houthi missile force was eliminated, but I haven't seen anything concrete on that front. What we do know, the things that we can measure here, is the Houthis are continuing to carry out attacks against Israel, firing long-range missiles into Israeli territory, and against U.S. military vessels in the Red Sea. That's a little messy right now because we're really just getting one-sided reporting. The Houthis are saying for about 7 days in a row now that they've carried out attacks with drones and missiles against U.S. ships like the Harry S. Truman. We're not seeing anything from the United States in terms of defending those attacks, and we have at times. So in previous iterations of all this, we have seen examples of the U.S. intercepting Houthi missiles and drones. Not really seeing that right now. So either that information just isn't coming out, or the Houthis are missing by a lot, and we don't actually have to intercept it. But either way, for probably the 6th or 7th day now, the Houthis are saying publicly, we are continuing to attack Americans and will continue to do so until, of course, what the Houthis say, the siege of Gaza is lifted and the aid is allowed to flow in to the Palestinian people. But I'll put sources for all of this in the description below if you want to check it out. But that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.